Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we are diving into something I never expect to be this important, but turned out it's really confusing for beginner. And we will talk about layer management, especially when it comes to making a webtoon. If you have ever watched a timelapse of me working on a webtoon, it probably looks super neat and easy, right? But in reality, this is what I'm actually dealing with for just one webtoon page. Not only a few dozen layers, we are talking about 100 of them. I noticed that a lot of you are still curious and kinda confused about how I manage my layers, so I decided to make this video focusing on that, nothing else but layer. Now, the way I organize my layer is actually pretty simple. You can think of it as having three main sections: the top, the middle, and the bottom. The top section is where I put things like speed balloon and effects. I always separate the balloon shape from the text, so it's easier for me to translate into other language later on. And by effects, I mean the layer for sound effects, motion line, and things like flower. In the middle part, there is a panel folder, which is where your webtoon panel go, and then there is a line art folder that includes your line for character and object. The up there is the color folder, where you put the color that fills the line art. And finally, everything else will go into the background folder. So here is how it looks in practice. Everything that counts as line art, whether it's character or their accessories, get grouped into one folder. I also give that folder a yellow color tag so it's easier for me to spot and organize while I'm working. Next, we have the color folder. This folder always sits right under the line art folder. Inside the color folder, I put the base color, shading, and lighting for the webtoon character. I always start by blocking the character shapes first. It really helps later on, especially when the panel has more than one character. It really makes the coloring process so much easier to manage. For example, when I'm adding the base color, I like to organize them even further into skin, clothes, and hair folder using the clipping group feature. Make sure the folder for the character base color is placed above the silhouette blocks and set as clipping group. That way, the color will stay neatly inside the shapes like this. When it comes to the base color folder, honestly the order is flexible. You can put the hair below the skin or have the clothes at the very bottom. It doesn't really affect the result. What matters is that you color everything neatly. And make sure there are no gaps left uncolored. And don't forget to set the folder as clipping group to the character silhouette block. Next up, let's talk about how I do shading with this folder setup. I usually break it down into two stages. First, I add a shading layer above the color folder and set it as a clipping group. I set according to the light direction here, and this method makes the shading looks more natural and also speed up my workflow. Then, the second stage, I will move that shading layer to clip it directly into the specific folder, like skin, clothes, or hair base color. For example, if I clip it into the skin base color, even if I set across the entire character, it will only show up into the skin. The same goes for the shading clothes and hair later on. So here is an example for a finished shading layer. If you want to change the shading color, just lock transparent the layer and press Alt-Delete on your keyboard to fill it with new color. For instance, if I want to move this shading to the hair, I will clip the shading layer only to the hair base color layer. For other part like skin or clothes, I simply duplicate the shading layer using the usual Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, then change the shading color to match that base color. With this workflow, I'm basically making just one shading layer, but the whole process becomes way faster because I only need to copy and paste and swap color. The next step is simply filling the other folder I mentioned in the beginning of this video. But in my workflow, I always prefer to finish the background after I'm done with the characters. That's why the focus now is on the layer below the character layer. I usually tag the background folder with a purple color label. This folder typically contains 3D backgrounds or texture background. In modern webtoon production, creating backgrounds manually for every panel will take forever. That's why most new webtoon you read from the studio nowadays use 3D material to save times. But if you want to become a webtoon artist, you still need to understand the perspective rules so your characters will naturally connect to the background no matter what tools you use. After the background is done, the next focus is on the layer above the character. Since my drawing doesn't have any panel yet, I will go ahead and add panel frame inside the panel border. But When I add it like this, you will notice the background is showing through the panel border. To fix this, I will use a masking layer to clean it up this way. I don't have to erase anything directly from the background folder. This next step is something you will probably do a lot if you are making a drama or romance webtoon. For example, the flower brush I'm using in this video. You can find it in Clip Studio Material Library. It's free for commercial use, so feel free to use it in your own project. When it comes to effect above the character layer, I usually divide them into 3 types: lighting effects, flowery effects, and sound effects and motion line. For this example, I'm going to throw in all of them at once, just to show you how it looks when they are combined. And finally, we have the dialogue folder. I always separate the speech balloon and the text into different folders. This makes it way easier to change the language later on when translating the comics. The size and the position of the balloon will stay the same, so every version, no matter what the language, will still look consistent. Inside the text folder, I also organized by the language. For example, I will have one for English and another one for Indonesian, just like in this webtoon. Now, here is a little bonus explanation about why I always start with the silhouette blocks when coloring the character. That silhouette blocks is super useful later on for adding things like character shadow that fall into the background, just like example here. It also makes more easier to create a white outline around the character. This white outline helps separate the character from the background, making them stand out more in the scene. And that is a more detailed look how I manage my layer when creating my webtoon. That is for today's video. I hope you found this helpful.